Ladies and gentlemen, there's a unique kind of pain that comes not from losing someone, but from never really having them at all. We've all been there, the heart that beats faster at the thought of someone who exists more in our imagination than in reality. And yet, we clutch onto that fantasy, hoping, wishing, waiting. Here's the truth: holding on to someone who was never yours is like trying to grasp smoke. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. The longer you wait, the more precious time you lose. Time that could be spent on yourself, on your growth, on your joy. Letting go isn't about giving up or admitting defeat. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about saying, I deserve real love, not a story I've invented in my head. It's about acknowledging that your worth isn't tied to someone else's attention, or lack thereof. When you release someone you never had, you open a door. You allow life to bring someone real, someone reciprocal, someone who will be present in your reality, not just your daydreams. And while it's painful at first, it's also liberating. Because letting go is not a loss, it's a gain. A gain of clarity, self-respect, and freedom. Remember, the story you've been telling yourself about them doesn't define your future. What defines your future is the love, the attention, and the energy you invest in yourself. So step forward, let go of the mirage, and make room for the real. Because you deserve a love that's tangible, mutual, and undeniable. And it will only come when you let go of what never truly belonged to you. There is a unique kind of H that lives quietly inside those who have loved someone from afar, or who have allowed their hearts to attach to a possibility that never truly existed. This pain is subtle but relentless, like a shadow that follows you even on the sunniest of days. It is not marked by dramatic heartbreak or tears that flow freely. Instead, it is felt in the small, almost imperceptible moments. The pause when their name appears on your phone, the fleeting pang when you remember a smile that was never meant for you, the quiet longing in the middle of the night when your mind replays moments that were never actually shared. The heart, in its stubborn hope, can hold onto an image, an idea, a story you've created in your own mind, and that alone can feel like the deepest form of attachment. Acknowledging this pain requires courage, because it is not always socially validated. People grieve the loss of relationships that were real, and they often struggle to understand the grief that comes from something that never tangibly existed. There is no tangible closure, no conversation to have, no words exchanged to create understanding between two hearts. The relationship you are mourning is ephemeral, existing more in imagination than in reality, yet the emotions it evokes are undeniably real. This paradox creates confusion. We may feel foolish for longing after someone who never belonged to us, yet our feelings are not illusions. They are authentic responses to the dreams and expectations we allowed ourselves to build. To acknowledge the pain is to give yourself permission to feel it fully without judgment. To recognize that your heart has experienced something significant, even if it was never reciprocated or tangible. In many ways, this type of pain exposes a deeper vulnerability within us. It forces us to confront our desire for connection, the human need to be seen, loved, and valued. When we fall for someone who never becomes a part of our reality, we are forced to sit with the emptiness of unfulfilled longing. We are challenged to face the questions we often try to avoid. Why do I want someone who does not want me? Why have I invested energy in imagining a future that may never come to pass? These questions are not meant to induce guilt, but to foster awareness. By acknowledging the pain, we begin to understand the patterns that guide our heart's choices. The tendency to idealize, the yearning for approval, and the hope that perhaps, if we hold on just a little longer, the other person will somehow appear in the way we wish them to. Acknowledging the pain is also an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that your feelings matter, even when circumstances feel unfair or irrational. It allows you to confront the truth without trying to hide it behind distraction or denial. This step is essential because pretending the longing does not exist or minimizing the intensity of your emotions only prolongs the heart's quiet suffering. When you sit with the ache, examine it, and recognize it as valid, you create the first real space for healing. You give yourself the chance to transition from unconscious attachment to conscious awareness, from passive yearning to empowered understanding. This recognition does not mean you are powerless. On the contrary, it is the first moment of reclaiming your agency. By naming and feeling the pain, you acknowledge its existence, you validate your own experience, and you prepare the ground for release. You allow yourself to see the difference between what is real and what is imagined, between the love you desire and the reality of what you actually have. It is not an easy process, because the mind has a way of clinging to possibilities. But acknowledging the pain is the only way to step forward with clarity, to eventually make room for what is genuine, rather than what exists only in the confines of hope. There is a subtle danger in the stories we tell ourselves about people we are drawn to, especially when those people are not truly a part of our lives. Our minds are extraordinary storytellers, capable of weaving elaborate narratives from the smallest of encounters: a smile, a passing glance, a few shared words. We attach meaning to moments that may have been fleeting, projecting our hopes, desires, and unmet needs onto someone who never consciously invited them. In this way, we fall in love not with the person themselves, but with a carefully constructed image of them, a version of reality that exists more in our imagination than in the actual world. Understanding this illusion is crucial, because it is often the invisible thread that keeps us tethered to something that will never be ours. The illusion begins innocuously. Perhaps it starts with admiration, someone's confidence, their kindness, or the way they light up a room. Slowly, admiration morphs into fascination, and fascination grows into longing. Our brains, craving connection and significance, begin filling in the blanks. We imagine conversations that never happened, shared dreams that were never voiced, or mutual feelings that may not exist. This imagined version feels real, because it engages the same emotional centers in our brain as real experiences do. Our hearts respond to the fantasy with genuine intensity, which makes it even harder to discern reality from illusion. We are not deceitful or weak for experiencing this. We are human. The problem arises when we mistake the imagined for the actual, allowing it to shape our emotions, decisions, and expectations. Recognizing this illusion requires honesty and reflection. It requires stepping back from the story we have created and examining the facts. What has actually occurred? What has been reciprocated? What signals are real and which have been amplified or misinterpreted by our desire to see connection where it may not exist? This process can be uncomfortable, even painful, because it challenges the comforting narrative we have relied on. Yet it is necessary because illusions, no matter how beautiful, can hold us captive. They prevent us from engaging fully with reality, from seeing people and situations clearly, and from investing our energy where it will actually yield emotional nourishment. The more time we spend chasing an imagined version of someone, the more we lose the opportunity to experience real connections and genuine fulfillment. Understanding the illusion also means understanding the role of our own unmet needs. Often, the people we idealize become mirrors for what we wish to receive: validation, attention, or love that we feel is lacking. We may unconsciously select qualities in others that fit a template we have constructed, rather than seeing them as they truly are. When the mind layers these projections over a person who is not available or attuned to our needs, we trap ourselves in a cycle of longing and disappointment. By acknowledging the illusion, we reclaim clarity over our own desires and our own emotional investment. We stop blaming the other person for a connection that was never theirs to give, and start taking responsibility for how we engage with our emotions and expectations. This awareness is liberating because it frees us from chasing shadows. When we recognize that the person we have been longing for exists primarily in our imagination, we can begin to disentangle our feelings from the fantasy. We start to see them as human, complex, imperfect, and not necessarily aligned with the story we have written for them. This does not diminish the intensity of our emotions. It simply brings them into alignment with reality. Understanding the illusion is not about suppressing feelings, but about seeing clearly, so that we can choose how to respond rather than being driven by unexamined projections. It is the first step toward letting go, toward redirecting our energy into connections that are genuine and reciprocal, and toward honoring our own hearts by investing them wisely. Releasing attachment is one of the most challenging yet transformative acts we can perform in our emotional lives. When we care deeply about someone we never truly had, our hearts become entwined with a version of reality that exists only in our minds. The mind convinces us that holding on is necessary, that persistence will eventually yield the connection we crave. Yet, the paradox is that the very act of holding on often prevents the fulfillment we desire. Attachment, in this sense, is less about love and more about control. It is the belief that we can influence or possess the feelings, attention, or presence of someone who has the freedom to exist independently of us. Understanding this distinction is the first step toward liberation. Releasing attachment is not a process of denial. It does not require that we erase our feelings or pretend that our longing does not exist. On the contrary, it begins with acknowledging those emotions fully, feeling the weight of disappointment, and admitting the truth that the person we desire may never reciprocate or even be aware of the depth of our feelings. The act of recognition is powerful because it breaks the illusion that our happiness depends on the other person's involvement in our lives. By facing the truth, we reclaim autonomy over our own emotional landscape. It is a declaration that our hearts will not be hostage to a mirage, no matter how beautiful or compelling it may seem. The process of letting go also requires shifting perspective. Attachment thrives when we believe that our fulfillment lies outside of ourselves. We convince ourselves that love, validation, or meaning can only come from a specific person, but this belief overlooks the boundless sources of joy and connection that exist within and around us. Releasing attachment means cultivating a mindset that recognizes our intrinsic worth and the richness of life independent of a particular individual. It is about turning inward, nurturing our passions, strengthening our self-awareness, and investing in experiences and relationships that honor our true selves. When we stop clinging to someone who is not present, we create space for growth, opportunity, and the possibility of authentic connections that reflect our own values and desires. Emotionally, letting go is a practice of surrender. It involves accepting uncertainty and relinquishing the illusion of control. This does not mean giving up hope in life or love. Rather, it is the acknowledgement that we cannot force someone to feel, act, or be in a way that aligns with our imagined scenario. Surrender allows us to release the tension, the constant replay of what ifs and maybes, and to replace it with clarity and calm. In the absence of attachment, we are free to engage with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be, and to invest our energy where it will truly bear fruit. Releasing attachment also carries an element of self-respect. It is an act of honoring our own needs and boundaries, recognizing that clinging to something unattainable can erode self-esteem, self-confidence, and emotional balance. By stepping back, we affirm that our hearts are valuable, that our attention is precious, and that we are worthy of a love that is fully mutual rather than imagined. In this process, we often discover that the intensity of our feelings does not diminish our strength. Instead, it becomes a source of insight, teaching us about our desires, triggers, and patterns. Ultimately, letting go is not a single act but a continuous practice. It may involve moments of doubt, longing, and reflection, yet each conscious choice to release attachment strengthens our resilience. Each time we choose ourselves over the fantasy, we reclaim a piece of our freedom. Attachment may have once made us feel connected, but releasing it makes us whole. It allows us to approach life with clarity, to pursue relationships that are reciprocal, and to engage with the world with a sense of openness, rather than clinging to what cannot be possessed. Embracing self-worth is one of the most essential yet overlooked steps in the journey of letting go. When we find ourselves longing for someone we never truly had, it often reflects not only our desire for connection, but also an unspoken question about our own value. Am I enough? The truth is, our sense of self-worth is frequently tied to the approval, attention, or affection of others, especially those we idealize. When that approval is absent or unattainable, it can feel as though our identity or significance is diminished. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step toward reclaiming our power. Embracing self-worth means understanding that our value is inherent and not contingent upon someone else's presence or validation. It is an internal recognition that we are whole, complete, and deserving of love simply by virtue of existing, regardless of whether a particular person reciprocates our feelings. Often, The attachment we feel to someone who is unavailable or unattainable stems from an unconscious belief that being loved by them will confirm our value. We may romanticize their attention, imagining that their acknowledgement would validate our desirability or prove that we are worthy. Yet this is a fragile foundation upon which to stake our happiness, because it places the power of our emotional fulfillment outside of ourselves. Embracing self-worth requires us to shift that power inward, to cultivate a sense of esteem that cannot be shaken by another person's choices. It is about telling ourselves, in the quiet moments when longing surfaces, that our worth does not hinge on someone's interest, that we do not need external validation to feel complete, and that we have the right to prioritize our own emotional well-being above imagined scenarios. Developing self-worth also involves understanding and honoring our boundaries. When we cling to someone who is not available, we often compromise our own needs, excusing behaviors or situations that do not serve us, simply to maintain proximity to the person we desire. By embracing our self-worth, we begin to recognize that we deserve respect, reciprocity, and care in all forms of connection. We start to ask ourselves questions that reflect this value. Am I investing in someone who values me as much as I value them? Am I nurturing a fantasy at the expense of my own happiness? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they are liberating because they guide us toward choices that reinforce our dignity and honor our emotional integrity. Self-worth is reinforced through self-compassion and conscious reflection. It is about noticing the patterns in our attachments, acknowledging the feelings that arise without judgment, and making deliberate decisions that prioritize our growth. When we embrace self-worth, we treat ourselves as we would someone we deeply care for, protecting our heart, nurturing our passions, and refusing to settle for anything less than what aligns with our values. This practice transforms the way we relate not only to those we desire, but also to ourselves, allowing us to engage with life from a place of confidence rather than neediness, from empowerment rather than dependency. Embracing self-worth also opens the door to genuine connection. When we stop measuring our value through the lens of someone who does not or cannot reciprocate, we create space for relationships that are balanced, mutual, and authentic. People who are drawn to us in this state are attracted to the fullness of who we are, not the projections we have imposed on them. We begin to understand that real love does not require sacrifice of self, compromise of dignity, or hope built on uncertainty. It requires presence, mutual respect, and acknowledgement of each person's value. Ultimately, embracing self-worth is about reclaiming ownership of our hearts and our lives. It is a declaration that our emotional happiness is not negotiable, that our feelings are valid, and that our time and energy are precious. By valuing ourselves, we begin to release the hold of someone who never truly belonged to us, and in doing so, we make space for clarity, peace, and real, meaningful connections that reflect the respect and love we owe to ourselves. Every experience, no matter how painful or unfulfilled, carries within it a lesson, and the heart-ache of longing for someone we never truly had is no exception. When we invest our emotions, time, and energy into a connection that exists primarily in our imagination, we are given a mirror, a reflection of our desires, our vulnerabilities, and our patterns. Learning the lesson means turning toward that mirror with honesty and curiosity, rather than turning away in frustration or self-reproach. It is an invitation to understand not only the other person, but also ourselves, why we were drawn to them, what we were seeking, and what this attachment reveals about our own emotional landscape. The pain we feel is not merely an unfortunate byproduct of unreciprocated feelings. It is a teacher, gently guiding us toward greater self-awareness, resilience, and clarity. One of the most important lessons this type of experience imparts is the difference between fantasy and reality. When we fall in love with someone who is unattainable, we often invest in an imagined narrative rather than the actual person. We fill in the gaps with assumptions, hopes, and projections, believing in a version of them that aligns perfectly with our desires. The lesson here is about perception, understanding that our mind can craft compelling stories that feel real, even when they are not. Recognizing this allows us to distinguish between who someone truly is and the version of them we have created. This awareness is critical, not only in relationships with others, but also in our interactions with ourselves, helping us navigate future connections with more clarity and discernment. Another lesson lies in emotional boundaries and the limits of attachment. Loving someone from afar, or yearning for a connection that never materializes, can reveal how easily we give away our emotional energy to things outside of our control. It teaches us that we must cultivate discernment in where we invest our heart, time, and attention. The lesson is not to shut down our capacity to love, but to channel it wisely toward people and situations that reflect our worth and reciprocity. By experiencing the consequences of unreciprocated longing, we learn the importance of balance, to feel deeply without losing ourselves, to hope without becoming dependent, and to care without sacrificing our integrity. These experiences also teach resilience. The pain of wanting someone who never belonged to us forces us to confront disappointment and manage emotions that may feel overwhelming. By sitting with this discomfort rather than suppressing it, we strengthen our emotional muscles. We learn that we can survive longing, heartbreak, and unfulfilled desire. We discover that our capacity to feel deeply does not define our weakness. Rather, it is a testament to our humanity. Each moment of reflection, each tear shed in quiet solitude, becomes a stepping stone toward emotional maturity, preparing us for connections that are genuine, mutual, and nourishing. Furthermore, the lesson is about self-discovery. When we examine why a particular person captured our attention or imagination, we uncover our own unmet needs, values, and aspirations. We may realize that we were seeking validation, excitement, or a sense of significance that we could not provide for ourselves. Recognizing these truths allows us to redirect our energy inward, to cultivate self-love, and to meet our own emotional needs, rather than relying on someone else to fill a void. In this way, the longing becomes a catalyst for personal growth, prompting us to understand who we are, what we want, and how to create a life that is fulfilling independently of external validation. Ultimately, learning the lesson from unfulfilled desire transforms the experience from a source of suffering into a source of wisdom. It turns a heartache into insight, a mirage into clarity, and a longing into self-awareness. By paying attention, reflecting, and extracting meaning from the experience, we equip ourselves to engage with life and love more consciously, more intentionally, and more courageously. Opening up to possibilities is the final and most liberating step in the journey of letting go. After acknowledging our pain, understanding the illusions we have built, releasing attachment, embracing our self-worth, and learning the lessons hidden in unfulfilled longing, we arrive at a space where choice and opportunity emerge. To open ourselves to possibilities is to recognize that the end of one imagined story is not the end of our lives or our capacity for connection. It is an invitation to step into the unknown with courage, curiosity, and hope, trusting that life has experiences waiting for us that are more real, more reciprocal, and more fulfilling than anything we could have conjured in our minds. This openness requires a conscious decision to stop clinging to what cannot be held and to allow new experiences to enter without fear or resistance. One of the essential aspects of opening up to possibilities is the understanding that letting go does not mean emptiness, it means space. When we release someone we never truly had, we create room in our hearts and minds for relationships that are authentic and present. These new opportunities may appear in ways we do not expect, through friendships, connections, or love that is fully reciprocal. By opening ourselves, we remove the invisible barriers built by attachment and longing, and we allow life to surprise us. This openness is not passive, it is an active engagement with reality. It is the conscious choice to see beyond the limitations of our previous fantasies, and to embrace what is available, tangible, and mutually nourishing. Opening up to possibilities also involves embracing uncertainty with grace. Often, we cling to what is familiar, even if it is unfulfilling, because it provides a sense of security, a known pattern. Stepping into the unknown can feel uncomfortable or even frightening, because it requires faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in life, and faith in the idea that what is meant for us will arrive in its own time. But it is within this uncertainty that growth occurs. By allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in this way, we signal readiness to receive what is real and aligned with our highest good, rather than what is imagined, fleeting, or unattainable. This mindset also transforms how we engage with ourselves and our own potential. Opening up to possibilities is not only about other people, it is about the life we can create for ourselves when we are no longer tethered to illusions. It encourages exploration, creativity, and self-investment. We become willing to pursue passions, nurture talents, and cultivate joy that is independent of external validation. By doing so, we enhance our capacity to attract meaningful connections that resonate with our authentic self, because we are living fully, openly, and with integrity. Another vital aspect of opening up to possibilities is the cultivation of hope without attachment to specific outcomes. It is the ability to remain optimistic and open-hearted while understanding that the timing, form, or nature of what comes may differ from what we had imagined. This approach allows us to navigate life with curiosity and resilience, ready to embrace opportunities as they arise, rather than resisting or judging them against the standard of a fantasy that never existed. In essence, it is the practice of allowing life to surprise us, while trusting that our worth, clarity, and readiness will guide us toward what is truly aligned with our needs and desires. Opening up to possibilities is, therefore, a profound act of empowerment. It signifies the culmination of emotional work, the integration of lessons learned, and the reclamation of agency over our hearts and lives. It transforms longing into anticipation, loss into readiness, and pain into the fertile ground for growth. By embracing this openness, we step into a future where connection, love, and fulfillment are no longer imagined, but real, mutual, and tangible. So letting go of someone you never had is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate act of courage. It is the choice to honor your own heart, to step out of illusions, and to embrace the truth of your own worth. When you release what was never yours, you make space for what is real, reciprocal, and deeply fulfilling. You open yourself to a life where love, joy, and connection are not dependent on fantasy, but rooted in reality. Remember, the person you are holding on to was never the source of your happiness. You were. And by reclaiming yourself, you become ready to welcome the kind of love and experiences that you truly deserve, ones that reflect the fullness, strength, and beauty of who you are.